I'm such a huge believer in movement, and momentum teaches you more than thinking. And so if you move and you do action steps, you're going to learn so much more in quicker cycles than you would just like mulling over it.
Welcome to The Path to Owning It, a podcast by Provide, powered by Fifth Third. Here, we share real stories and raw lessons from business owners who have lived them. Join us as we spotlight one entrepreneur's journey at a time, from the first spark of an idea to the pivots, challenges, and wins that shape their path. Because entrepreneurship isn't a straight line. It's personal, unpredictable, and full of lessons worth sharing. I'm your host, Corey Brown, a marketing leader at Provide with over a decade of experience supporting small business owners. Whether you're just starting out or deep in the game, this is where you'll hear the unfiltered reality of building something that matters. Like what you hear? Follow The Path to Owning It on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you listen. Today, I'm joined by Krista and Phil Franks, the husband and wife co-founding team behind Owl and Key, a platform built around intentional living and lifestyle design. Krista has spent over a decade guiding thousands of people through transitions and reinventions, working with individuals from some of the world's most recognized companies and brands. Phil is the founder of Nucleus, a creative advisory firm behind some of today's most influential brand and product work, and brings decades of experience helping companies at pivotal moments of growth find clarity, direction, and momentum. Together, Krista and Phil didn't just build a business. They rebuilt their lives first and then built a company around what they found on the other side. Krista, Phil, welcome to the show.
Corey, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Corey. We're glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear. And, I just have to say, I came into this conversation with a little more context than I usually do because, as you know, I've actually experienced your work firsthand. And I'll just say it was one of those experiences that kind of, quietly recalibrates something in you, which is why I'm just so happy to have you on the show. I think your story and what you've built is something that our audience just really needs to hear.
Well, thank you. Thanks for saying that. I like how you said quietly recalibrates because it does. It works in the background.
Yeah.
It just sticks with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had to write that one down when I thought of it. I'm like, that is the perfect way to describe it.
We might borrow it if you don't mind.
I might use that one, Corey.
You can have it. You got it. But before we get into the business itself, just give us a quick snapshot. What were your careers and day-to-day lives like before you decided to build something together?
Well, what a long time ago. So Phil and I met at work. We met at a digital agency. I was in account management with PR communications background. He being the director of design and running the design team, and then ultimately becoming partner at that company and running HR. And I just always had a love for people and people development and helping. And I had already left Dynamic at that company to kind of go out on my own and test entrepreneurship as a coach, a guide, kind of start to get my feet wet. And what would it look like to transition my career into something more people-oriented? So I was kind of working from home. I would try to pinpoint the year that this was, but I can't, other than the fact that our son was born in 2017. So it's probably around 2015, 2016. And at that time, then Phil was going into the office day to day, working at that company, leading teams. The company was growing very quickly. And so we were kind of running differently than we were when we were working together. And then I got pregnant. And so we were living this very different reality on a day to day. And over that 9-month time, kind of figured out that we might want to change the way that we were living those days, so that we could be a little bit more present with each other, our family, our kids, etc. That's the story we'll dive into.
Perfect. Phil, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I'd say that our relationship was born at work, and we had a lot of great chemistry there. And that was probably one of the first moments where we felt what most people probably feel in their day-to-day lives, whether it's like personally for myself, my own journey, or interpersonally with somebody else. I guess the word I would use is just kind of tension. Like there was a tension and a misalignment with where we were trending. And that node of information that quite often gets overlooked, we decided to look at. And we decided to say like, hey, this doesn't feel like we're going in the right direction. Like, how can we re-architect and redesign our life experience to make this work and bring us back to that central line that we felt not too long ago?
Yeah, that's exactly what I want to get into next. The brand video on your website, or the About Us, is something that really stuck with me when I was researching for this. And you said that the two of you at this point asked yourselves a question that changed everything, right? It's the, if we died tomorrow, would we be proud of the way we live today? And at that time, your answer was no, we wouldn't. So I guess my question, what changed in how you approached your careers after you had that pivotal conversation?
That question came up for me before I exited that job, and it was really all about a sense of purpose and meaning in the work that I do. If I'm going to work so hard, I want it to be for something that I really truly care about, and I want it to be a fulfilling part of my life and a fulfilling part of my family's life in the future.
Yeah, I think we each kind of experienced it in our own way. Krista had hers via like a personal health scare at work and was very anxious time to time and just was feeling a lot of tension with that work. And then I felt it after we found out we'd be expecting our first son. We didn't know it was our son. We were surprised by that gift. But I had a moment at the job where the way that I say it to people was like a universal moment where it was kind of like your inner voice kind of just told you that it was time to change direction. Mine came through kind of like a vision and a meeting of another woman that was on the client side. And I kind of saw my story and her story. And it was completely for me. Like, it wasn't like an interaction we had. It was just kind of like a vision that I had. The thing that I brought home to Krista was, I think I'm done, but I don't quite know what that means yet. I mean, I was 12 years into this career at the top of the proverbial food chain. We were really kind of baked into our lifestyle at that point with economics and where we were living and all these different things and our normal day-to-day workflow for our life. And so really the question she said is like, where do you want to begin? And that's when we kind of started to really redefine our parameters, which is not something we're taught how to do. We're not taught how to like really look at our life objectively like that as a design project. And thankfully, my partner was ready to do that with me and really the guide in that process.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people probably have had those feelings of, I know that this isn't the right thing, but I am too stuck in my life. I like these vacations, whatever that thing is, right? So I guess what gave you guys the strength or the certainty that this is something that you could do, and how could others find that in themselves?
I think that we have a good foundation built already from the get-go of our marriage. I remember at our first house, I said, Phil, we need to sit down and talk about our shared values. What are we actually trying to do here? Where do we align? Where do we not align? So we kind of already had that value set floating around in our life, which gave us shared language. What are we prioritizing? What's most important to us as a duo? We have our independent priorities, but like, what's together? So that helped us from a language and communication standpoint and alignment perspective. We also already had kind of a pretty solid, clunky, not pretty budget system where we could project and look at, well, if these things get put into place, we could support our life and, have a runway, and we knew how much we had in savings and yada, yada. But, we were also fortunate to have income streams coming from my work that I had already been doing. And then Phil had always done freelance design work on the side. So we were trying to originally, fun story, I just remembered that we were trying to build a restaurant at the time that was lifestyle based. It was going to be healthy food, all day vibes, really great environment. Thank God that didn't work out, because we would have been, opening a restaurant.
COVID would have been a struggle. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it would have been terrible. So another business lesson, be grateful for the things that don't work out. But in the meantime of trying to build that business, we were using our skills to be able to kind of make sure that we were taking care of our income and our revenue. And then the budget helped us to kind of just stay on track. So we had a lot of systems already that gave us the confidence. And then, of course, we just had, lots of training and network and people in our life who were there to support.
Yeah. Yeah. So Krista asked you, Phil, where you want to begin. What was your answer, and what was that like first concrete step that you both took to pursue something else?
The place that I think is important to remember for us where we started, and for everybody that's listening, is I'm a huge believer in starting with vision. It's sometimes hard to imagine what a place would be when you're going through that point of change, because you're being pulled in every direction, right? It's the excitement, the fear, what's going to happen? Am I going to be okay? Can I support this child that's coming into the world? A question that I was very much asking myself. And I think when you root and vision what's possible for yourself and kind of back out of that vision into what's now, you can begin to see a trace of that trail, right? Like, where's the next step I can take? Where's the next thing I can do? And so what we decided to do was really test a theory on what could we do to support ourselves income-wise, right? Because I think money tends to be one of the biggest things that people get over. Careers, supporting myself via stable paycheck, healthcare, all the things that all of us should be thinking about. And so we started there from that vision of we want our life to look like this. And that vision was we want to have flexibility in our days to spend time with us as a family. My vision personally was to be able to go to the zoo on a random Thursday. And so to wake up and not be worried about a meeting being booked for me or having to go to a client in Texas or wherever we were going that week, to really define that vision and work backwards. And so then that starts to derive what criteria needs to be in place in which to do that. And so because I had flexibility in what I was providing with design, user experience, application development, I had said, oh, I can do that remotely. So the next question was, well, would somebody actually let me do that for them with this kind of fledgling design business that we were starting? My first task was to send emails to my network. So I sent about 6 to 10 emails, probably the following day, asking, and really using the restaurant as the proverbial excuse. We were trying to fund a restaurant. I had openings for projects. And I believe 6 of those emails came back and said they wanted to use my time to do that stuff. And so that gave us that data element to say like, whoa, this is possible. Now that isn't by no means like a business development process or anything like that, but it's that first data point that we said, cool, we can feel more comfortable with this. Let's start to go down that direction.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice anyone can take away from this conversation. Up until this point, we have talked about the moment Krista and Phil asked themselves a question most people are afraid to answer honestly, and how their answers changed the course of their careers, inspiring them to build their own business together. When we return, I want to dive into how they thought about risk and what phase 1 of Allen Key looked like. More with Krista and Phil right after this. Are you fresh out of school with big dreams and ambition to achieve them? Or is your current business bursting at the seams and it's time to expand your legacy? If you tend to challenge the status quo and shoot for the moon, Provide's SBA loan may be for you. Our dedicated team of small business experts will work with you to make your ownership dreams, no matter how big, a reality. To get started, visit getprovide.com to see how our tech-enabled small business financing and banking can work for you. Again, that's getprovide.com for when your aspirations of business ownership exceed traditional limits. I'm Corey Brown, and this is Provide's The Path to Owning It. We're back with Krista and Phil Franks. Before the break, we talked about what led them to start their business, Allen Key. Now, I want to get into how they evaluated the risk involved and what the initial build phase looked like. Krista, Phil, you've mentioned finances are basically risk, right? I'm just curious how you thought about risk at that stage with, a baby on the way. What were you willing or maybe not willing to put on the line at that time to make this happen?
We're both smiling and giggling a little bit because I think at the time we were, you're just blissfully ignorant. We were so focused on what we really wanted in our life, which was to be present as a family, work from anywhere, go to the zoo on a Thursday. And we were just so confident. We believed that we were going to be able to figure it out. So the risk, we could feel it, but it wasn't something that held us back from anything. On paper, it was a terrible decision. We were walking away from potential millions of dollars in a buyout of that company. Phil was walking away from a beautiful job with amazing benefits. The company really took care of their people right while we were having a baby. So on paper, it looked like the worst decision. And our poor parents were probably just beside themselves because they'd lived enough life to understand the risks that we were taking. The real risk for us was our time and our freedom. Are we willing to give up our time and our freedom and stay the course for what looks good on paper? And that was a no. So really, we were kind of weighing risks, right? We were weighing the financial risk with the time and energy risk and our presence in our family. And every time we get to that decision, even now, today, we always choose the option that gives us time, gives us capacity, gives us presence with our family or doing the things that we really want to do. And we always consider the very practical side of things. We're always looking at the finances. We're always making decisions through that lens, but that's not our only decision maker. So I would say from risk mitigation, we're kind of looking at that holistic picture: health, energy, time, financials. The biggest thing we're not willing to do is just put it all on the line just for the financial gain.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the important takeaway from this conversation too. I'm curious, when you went from a restaurant to the first version of Allen Key, what that looked like, and how did you validate if that was the right move and if it's working?
Corey, I love that question. The restaurant was a really good experience in a gateway into the entrepreneurial way. The company that I was with was very entrepreneurial. I was there from the time there was 4 people in a small office, and that thing grew to be a large agency. So I kind of got to see it, but my role in there wasn't like tip of the spear. And so when Krista and I went down the route of the restaurant, we got to kind of feel the mechanics of entrepreneurship in doing that. There's a method that we call 1 foot in, 1 foot out. We were very much balancing risk by, I was still in the organization. There was a 12-month window of me rolling out of the partnership. It was very much a process to get through that. That restaurant gave us a way to look into the future by application and doing. I'm such a huge believer in movement, and momentum teaches you more than thinking. And so if you move and you do action steps, whether that's collaborating with your partner or sending an email or calling a bank and saying, hey, we have this business plan, you're going to learn so much more in quicker cycles than you would just like mulling over it. And so with the restaurant, we just had to move. And ironically enough, as first-time entrepreneurs, never running a restaurant, never having any food experience other than ancillary through our proxy, like we had a bank offer to give us $750,000 to start our first restaurant.
Those crazy banks, I tell you.
And that really kind of blew our top off, right? And obviously we had all this stuff in place. We had a business plan, we had partners, we had a financial model, we had all this stuff that we had figured out as we went. But that situation and that experience gives a chance to be like, wow, the world is pretty malleable if you're willing to kind of go out beyond and just put yourself a little bit out there, maybe a little bit farther than what you know. And so that journey of the restaurant into what became Allen Key was really a good learning experience for us as we entered entrepreneurship.
Thank you for saying that crazy banks part, because I want to add on here that we had an amazing loan partner at the bank, and the level of detail that he made us go through in order to prove the model was so educational and so valuable. And it gave us the opportunity to show that even before this thing gets built, we've thought through the details. So it was a great learning all on its own to have to go through the due diligence of planning those models out, because then that's carried us through as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So when did the restaurant stop and this Allen Key venture take shape? Let's get into that a little bit.
So that was 2018 to 2019 is when we fully started saying we are not pursuing this restaurant space. It had morphed into a little bit of a different concept. It was no longer aligning. And then, of course, once you have a child, and we took him to all the meetings with us, we were also realizing that, okay, being in that physical space all the time is also going to take us away from family time, things that we want to be doing. And so we went ahead and kind of shut that down around that 2018, 2019 timeframe. And luckily, we had kept the design work. We had kept all of the guiding work. We had been doing that the whole time. And so we just said, okay, at this point, we're just going to go all in on Allen Key and really focus on productizing it, taking all the same concepts as building a restaurant where it's a one structure, one model, and you kind of product it out. We were doing the exact same thing through Allen Key and just making sure that we were writing the book. There's a structure, there's a framework, then, putting the program together on top of that. And so we just started from that place adding on, but it really did all start with, let's make sure that we have the framework that we both agree on and then build from that. But the funny thing is that we had been doing it in our life for years. We've been doing strategic planning for life. And as a couple, every year we go away and do this mapping of what the next year is going to be. And friends had already asked us about having a copy of the structure. So we had put it in this PDF format. And it had typos and grammar mistakes and all that stuff. And we would send it to people. And then once we started looking at that, we were like, let's just make this the foundation of what Allen Key is going to become and let everything grow from there. So right around that, like 2019, we really started committing to that. The good thing was we already had clients who were doing the work, workshops, companies, individuals. All we had to do was expand on it.
Yeah, amazing. So you already had this sort of like early validation that you had a product that had a market fit somewhere, right?
Yeah. And to Phil's point, from an action standpoint, as soon as we started building the earliest parts of that framework, we started selling it. There's nothing better to test and validate than to put it out to someone, see if someone will buy it, someone will put money into it. And that's how we kind of took the action and just started validating from the get-go. Sorry, Phil, I interrupted.
No, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say that it was an internal thing that we were scaffolding together on our own that was really providing value for us in that point of change, Corey, that we just talked about. We both needed anchors to that vision and then bringing in those values and the things that were important to us to kind of push those down the line of like, well, now what decisions need to be made? And when we were having friends asking about it, because we'd talk about it at dinners or when we had families over, we'd be very excited about it and be like, this is what we're doing and look at our plan. And they're like, wow, I've never seen something like this before for a family. And I had just come out of a pretty intense executive training / mentorship in the business where we had brought in an external partner who had done pretty well in larger organizations. And he had taught us the mechanics of how these large organizations plan their growth for the business. And I had this epiphany of this is happening in here, but all the mechanics of what a business is and what a family is are actually pretty similar. And so we kind of bolted this idea of strategic planning from a business sense into your lifestyle. And that was like a huge click for us because Krista had been doing it in this first iteration. And then we made this next iteration by bringing that click moment together. And that's when we were like, this can be something even better for families. We're seeing benefit from it. And that's when we started to turn it into a book and expand it from there.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we want to hear a little bit about the book as well and everything that came after. But that is going to have to wait until the next episode. Catch part 2 of Krista and Phil Franks' story on episode 72 of The Path to Owning It, dropping next month on June 17th. And find out how that click moment turned into a thriving business that's built around how they wanted to live, not the other way around. Krista, Phil, thank you so much for being open and honest with your story and how you thought about your lives and risk and still took that and started a business. We appreciate you being here.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Corey. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to The Path to Owning It. No two journeys look the same, but every one is full of real moments, raw lessons, and stories worth sharing. We hope today's episode gave you something to take with you on your own path. If you enjoyed the show, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps more listeners find these stories. Know an entrepreneur whose journey we should feature? Let us know in the comments or reach out on social. The Path to Owning It is brought to you by the team at Provide, powered by Fifth Third, where we back small business owners like you. If you're ready to bet on yourself, head to getprovide.com to explore tools, resources, and financing and banking options crafted to help you build your legacy. This show is produced by PodCamp Media, branded podcast production for businesses. That's podcampmedia.com. Producer Dusty Weiss, editor Harrison Fonder. For Provide, I'm Corey Brown. And to every small business owner out there, your story matters. Keep writing it.
Provide is a division of Fifth Third Bank, National Association. All opinions expressed by the participants are solely their current opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Provide, its affiliates, or Fifth Third Bank. The participants' opinions are based on information they consider reliable, but neither Provide, its affiliates, nor Fifth Third Bank warrant its completeness or accuracy and should not be relied upon as such. This content is for informational purposes and does not constitute the rendering of legal, accounting, tax, or investment advice or other professional services by Provide or any of its affiliates. Please consult with appropriate professionals related to your individual circumstances. All lending is subject to review and approval.